Oh, you are listening to Never Less Than Ill, the hip hop podcast right here on the Bros Who Think Network. I'm your host, Justin Ivy, veteran hip hop journalist, and I'm here with my man, the mastermind behind Bros Who Think, Lynden Burton. Lynn, how you doing these days, man?
I'm doing well, man. You know, just enjoying life, like loving the NBA finals. We got some Pelicans former players, as you can see by my hat. Like, got a Drew Holiday, Chris Paul playoffs, but I'm doing well, man. Can't complain.
Oh man, yes, this is our Pelican fan we're living vicariously through other teams because this is the closest we're going to get to a championship anytime soon.
Chill, Justin. Don't say that, man. That's not
Hey,
true.
hey, it worked when Max Minnelli said, "And Saints will never go to the Super," and that'll probably happen when the Saints go to the Super Bowl, and that'll probably never happen. And then it happened, and then he sampled his own lyric.
You're right. That did that. You're absolutely right.
I want so somebody will sample this when the Pelicans finally make it.
Lonzo on his new album, the new ZO.
Oh boy, and Nas will be on there to full circle him, dissing him and saying Future was better than Nas. But okay, anyway, but this week we're talking about, man, one of the guys who is probably the most responsible, if not, the king of the East Coast revival. We're talking about Mr. Roc Marciano, man who you can trace Griselda's comeback, emergence to, who the whole East Coast scene kind of finding this new life with this minimalist sound. Roc Marciano is the big reason why, and it's clear why, because, man, his solo career has been amazing after his kind of a renaissance. And we're getting into it today with Timmhotep Aku, one of my former bosses. Worked with him back at the Boombox. And man, his resume, too long to list, really. NPR, he was at Mass Appeal, Complex, Afropunk. Man, he's been everywhere. He launched levels over at Pitchfork. Timmhotep's done about everything, and he's been covering rock for much of his career. So we're going to get real deep into it with him and have a real fun conversation about Roc's career. So let's right on into it. All right, we're here with Timmhotep Aku, talking about Roc Marciano. Tim, how you doing, man? It's good to be talking to you.
I'm positive, man. I'm positive. I had a nice celebratory weekend this weekend. When I say celebratory, not of America, but just like of life. Hung out with some good people. I listened to some great music. So I'm in a good mood. How you guys doing?
Oh, man. Doing well. Is, I guess as well as you can be in this era.
The world on fire? Yeah. So.
Exactly.
But excited to be talking about Roc Marciano with you. So, I always like to start off just, do you remember the first time you heard Roc Marciano?
I do. I believe I was listening to Stretch and Bobbito's radio show. The Busta Rhymes album with The Heist had just come out. And I heard The Heist for the first time. And I was like, who is this super intense, like syllable-driven rapper on this song with like legends? Because it's like him and Raekwon and Busta. Like, he was the only kind of like no-name person, right? Or at least at that time. And I remember being very much struck by his presence on the record. And so when he resurfaced via Pete Rock's Instrumentals albums, I was very, very, very excited about that. Because he rhymed like there was a bomb strapped to his chest, and like only his intensity could fucking defuse it at that point. So that's my first time with Roc Marciano.
Yeah, I remember, I was super young, but I remember hearing that song too, The Heist, because I still am a complete Wu-Tang stan, and so it was like Raekwon and Ghost are on it, and I had the same reaction, like it was just, who the hell is this guy? And then his name's Roc Marciano. It's like, I'm not like a super boxing head, but it's like that's one of the most famous Rocky Marciano, one of the most famous. I'm like, okay, the name's standing out. Him being on this song is standing out. So he's in, in that early era. he gets involved with Flip Mode and Busta Rhymes. Obviously wasn't a part of them yet when they put their first album yet in '98, but you know, he gets involved in Flip Mode. He's on Rod Digga's album, and what the like? Do you remember it all? You know, Roc Marciano in Flip Mode, that era before the UN. Like, was there any kind of buzz around him then?
Not really. And to be honest, the thing that really gave Roc, I think, a buzz outside of Flip Mode Squad was Peachtrumentals. Was really like the UN appearances on Peachtrumentals. I really do feel like, at least on that song Cake, he plays like the cleanup man. He's got the last verse. It's like this exclamation point at the end of the song. But when he was in Flip Mode, I'll keep it funky. Like, Cass was not really checking for Flip Mode like that. Like, it was like Flip Mode was kind of like Busta and his homies, right? It was like Busta, his cousin Rampage. It was, I think, one of the cats from Killer Kids from Queensbridge. Lord Have Mercy was in there, and he, you know, the deep voice, robotic talking like this, like he had a bit more of the buzz than a Roc Marciano did. And Roc at that time was very, very young. I want to say he might have been maybe 19 when, you know, the Flip Mode records came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, like you said, it's that kind of that reemergence with the UN is what, you know, first made people pay attention. And I think part of that was, like you said, on Peachtrumentals, they were the only vocalists. You know, they just had those 2 tracks, and it was so odd. You know, it's like it's a big deal that Pete was doing a instrumental album, and then but he's got these 2 tracks. It's like, who are these guys? And yeah, like you said, that Cake record, that last verse is crazy. It still stands up.
Ridiculous record. And then there's like, leading up to that Peachtrumental album, I'm not sure if it was leading up. No, it was before it came out. There were a couple of Pete Rock singles, you know, from BBE. And there was a song that Nothing Lesser was there, but there was another song, Give It to Y'all. I don't know if are you familiar with that song?
I don't remember that one. No.
There's a song called Give It to Y'all, and it's produced by Pete Rock. It's a Pete Rock song featuring Roc Marciano and another cat from Long Island who has passed away, whose name escapes me at the moment. But it's this really, really intense kind of song. And I think for me, that was a big spotlight on who this Roc Marciano person was. And then when like the UN came out, it was like, you know, this is kind of an era in hip hop where everything's kind of been changed by Wu-Tang, right? So like, I don't like to compare folks to Wu-Tang, but I will say that Wu-Tang primed a lot of listeners for artists with these very different lyrical styles that were on some street shit. And that's exactly what like the UN was. Like, you had like Dino Brave, right? With the super cryptic, you don't know what he's talking about, but he's saying it kind of cool flow. You had the dude Laku, who was rapping on the shit, who was like very kind of abrasive. You had Mike Raw, rest in peace. And then you had Roc, who had this very precise, I don't know. And it's funny that he calls himself Roc Marciano, because it almost feels like a quick on his feet type of boxer when he's rapping. And that's what stood out to me.
One of the things that always was an oddity to me, I guess, about the UN was them being signed to Carson Daly's label. Like, it's so
4,
like
5,
in
6
retrospect,
records.
so random. Like, Roc Marciano is a part of a Carson Daly label. Do you think like that label not, you know, I guess taking off in any was kind of why that first album, the You In or You Out, like kind of just faded in some ways?
I think that's a part of it. I think well, you know, Carson Daly, like, I was surprised when I found this out about him back then, because I had done a profile of the UN for Mass Appeal magazine in its first iteration, and I had written about them when they put out You In or You Out for Complex super early, right? Like, I was like one of the first, I was probably the first music editor they hear it. No, I was the second music editor he had there. Anyway, what surprised me about it was that I found out that Carson Daly is ahead. Like, you know, somebody, that was one of the first times where you like look at somebody on TV and you're like, oh, look at this corny motherfucker, right? And then you find out behind the scenes they're up on all the shit, or a lot of the shit you might be up on, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you would have no clue from seeing them on TRL or whatever the fuck. But to your question, I think that him and them not being on a label that was like a powerhouse, that was like a Loud Records, which seemed like a more, obvious alley-oop for them, or maybe possibly a Raucous or whatever, probably played a part in kind of disadvantaging that record and it kind of being buried to a certain extent, or not getting the kind of like shine it deserved to get. And I think also at that time, I think people were caught up in Dipset and G Unit mania, right? Like if you think like this is a long ass time, this is like the early 2000s where I feel like when that record came out. And I think how people viewed street rap was kind of different. It was like, like it was either like you want some G Unit shit or whatever, you want some Dipset shit. And at that point, I feel like even Wu-Tang as a collective, their star was not as shining bright as it was in the years prior,
Yeah. It's funny because like I just remember like this was that came out like I was like maybe just starting high school when that came out. And it was so it was completely over my head. Like it didn't even later. But then it was like you get into like the rap forums and like this is like random blog spots just like posting entire regional music. And I was so into that. And like that's how I discovered the UN. And it was like, and I start connecting the dots basically of like, oh, they were on the Pete album and then Roc Marciano. Oh, wait a minute, he was the guy on the bus. So it was fun kind of going down that. I always liked going down those kind of rabbit holes of like catching up with people's discographies. But so the UN, we see them kind of, fade into obscurity really. And suddenly, maybe not quite 5 years ago, like 3, 4, maybe. Suddenly Roc Marciano starts to reemerge and we're seeing him on like guest appearances. And, I think he did one of Pete's albums again and like Marco Polo. But the one that like stood out to me was Jizza because Jizza is my favorite MC. And so
there you go.
So I'm like all in on the Pro Tools album and it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's Roc Marciano. It's him again. It's like, and then I see he's got a production credit on it too. And I'm like, wow. So it's like, it's all clicking and Kaz on that album too.
Yep.
And those two are kind of they're kind of the renaissance of that East Coast rap sound in the blog era. And also kind of introducing that minimalist style where we're seeing kind of the lack of drums and things like that. So what do you remember of kind of Roc Marciano's reemergence? Like, was it palpable in the city? Was it all playing out online almost?
So you said the magic word, and the magic word is blog. And I think when there isn't enough room for a certain type of artist on your video shows and on television, or a certain type of artist on the radio, or even mixtapes to a certain extent or whatever, it's like if you do something that's different, where's your home? And this is the advent of the internet becoming that home for those places. Like if you couldn't find an audience any other place because there were gatekeepers or whatever the fuck, the internet was that place. And for me, I had been one of those people who was kind of like following Roc to see where he would pop up again. And the place that was home for artists who were maybe exposed to the major label system, didn't make it, but still had talent, still had a following, still a few people like, oh, I liked him from that song, was underground shit. Was like Fat Beats, right? Like, so I was in this place where I was still very tapped into what was going on in like underground hip hop. I was doing an underground radio show on Columbia on WKCR at the time. And I was also tapped into internet shit on early like blog shit. And so like, I saw Roc resurface around then. And I was like, all right, I love what he does. Let me point everybody's attention to this. So songs like Snow were a big deal, right? Like a long, long time ago, shout out to Sky Lately. Like there used to be this blog called Riot, and it was like all these different people who were involved in streetwear and music and culture. And I used to post about fucking Roc Marciano on Smash. I used to post about Roc Marciano under an alias and shit like that. Cause I was just like of this mind that if somebody is dope, and we appreciate them, everybody should know about them. It's the same kind of like lunchroom mentality. Like when you find some shit and you show it to your friends at the lunchroom, it's like, yo, did you hear this shit? Or you're in the chat room, like, did you hear this shit? So I think Roc benefited from a couple of things at that point. He benefited from having the exposure, the little exposure he got from Pete Rock, Pete Instrumentals, Flip Mode to a lesser extent. And then he also benefited from the internet and the users, the bloggers, being people who are on the hunt for new music, right? And so like that kind of nexus of underground shit and internet shit, he was dead at the center of it when he reemerged.
And see, I want to say like from like Markberg, and then you get the Kendrick Lamar feature with Consequence, and then all the Action Bronson leading into Reloaded in 2012. I feel like that was like a perfect storm of just internet blog culture, people finding him. At least that's how I found him, was first with the Consequence K-Dot song, and then it was just diving into the crate.
Yeah. I think like Markberg is a to me like a genre redefining record, you know, and I'm sure we already know we're gonna get to this, but like Markberg was the record that created a lane for a lot of what we call underground East Coast style street rap right now. You know, like the first thing that comes to mind when I say that description is of course Griselda, but Griselda will tell you we're in the vein of this dude Roc, right? You know what I'm saying? And I think what's interesting about Roc too is like there's a lot of things I appreciate about him, and all of those things they're remnants of the influences that have been around him and his contemporaries that create this perfect formula for what he brings forth on a record.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, like you're saying, like Roc was a presence. It wasn't like he was away, like, you know, gone, but that Markberg, it was just this perfect storm of such a good album, but also kind of filling a need in a way, because, you know, this is, I mean, we're getting into the height of trap. And then, you know, I remember like just my early blogging days, like Kevin Nottingham's site, like that was the site you went for, you know, when you're trying to escape that.
Yep.
And so it's like Roc was like a perfect artist to be covered on that type of site. And I just remember like Markberg being, you know, I think
you gotta say it's Markberg because he'll get mad if he hears it.
Oh. And so it's like it builds in its reputation almost like in, you know, in subsequent years, but it was so good, you know, just hitting at that time too. You know, what are your memories like of the album specifically? You know, were there, you know, were you impressed that like he was able to make something that good, or did you always see him as somebody capable of that?
Yo, so the most impressive thing to me was the self-production, right? Because I think, you know, a lot of people, we talk about the no drum thing and we talk about that specific loop approach to stuff. And it was something that I felt like maybe I was primed for, but I hadn't seen applied to type of artists like him. And what I mean by that is like, if you listen to the old Madlib beat tapes, right, from like the early 2000s, like the ones with like 60 joints on them, or even like some of the Dilla shit with like 60 joints on them, some of them shits, especially from Madlib, will be straight loops. You know what I'm saying? It'd be just straight chopped up loops or whatever. And it's like, okay, there's no drums. I'm getting used to understanding this instrumental as instrumental unto itself. But when I heard Roc shit, I had never heard somebody come with like the dope slinger / pimp / like a little bit aggressive, you know, calm, very Rakim inflected Li style on the shit and create a world. You know, like the Markberg shit, what he really, like, I really feel like separated him from folks is that he learned how to create a world sonically. So it's through like the type of instrumentals that he's using, and then it's also through how descriptive he is when he raps. Like his shit is straight up like, this is a 21st century blaxploitation flick, and I'm the protagonist. You know, and that's what struck me about Markberg, because I was like, fuck is this? Like, you know, like, because I definitely expected one thing, because like when you hear some of his UN records, he has more of an amped up flow. On these shits, he's more laid back. And I remember talking to some of my like OGs on some underground, you know, indie hip hop shit, and they were like, what is this? Where the drums at? This is not a real song. There's no drums. Why is he so calm? Well, you got to be spitting. And I was like, nah, bear with me. This shit is actually ill. And he went from kind of like the rejected stone to the cornerstone, where he has so many people who are in that lane. I don't want to say imitators, but people who are in that lane who are influenced by what he does, you know?
That's such a good point. It really stood out, that laid back flow. It was like it was so, it caught you off guard because it was like subverting your expectations in a way.
Precisely.
Yeah, and but yes, I think that's why I kind of love the album so much. That was like what you said about him producing the whole thing is like there's subsequent albums he's made that I think some people might argue are better. Like I know I saw people were on Reloaded saying Reloaded's were better.
I love Reloaded.
I'm a Reloaded guy.
I was always with that album is just him producing the whole thing is what just impressed me so much, because I was like, man, he's going off rapping, but this is so good sonically too.
Yo, I wanna like kind of give you a gem about that shit too, because there are similarities between Roc Marciano and another LI Long Island artist, and that artist is MF Doom. And I say that to say MF Doom really showed a lot of people in hip hop, especially so-called underground hip hop, indie hip hop, the power of reinvention, right? Like Doom, his first record, MF, Operation Doomsday, comes after like he basically fell off, right? For all intents and purposes, he had fallen off. Like nobody gave a fuck really. He was doing shit maybe here and there, but he was really hustling in the street. And Roc had a similar parallel where like after that UN record, people checking for him, but not really checking for him. And I don't want to, implicate, but he was in the street, you know what I'm saying? And I think there's something to be said for like what the lack of attention and resources does to push you to be kind of self-sufficient and make your own shit. And this is when it's dude who's been around Pete Rock, who's been around fucking Large Pro, who's been around Q-Tip, right? It's like, yo, I got to ear for records too. I could make beats. Maybe he's not as technically advanced, and I think that plays out in why some of the songs don't have all the drums. They're not like, they're sparse for a reason. I feel like it's a stylistic choice, but it also might have been a technical limitation at a certain point, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he understood, and Roc is a Doom fan. I think he understood like, yo, the way for me to be successful in this shit or do what I want to do is just that, to do what the fuck I want to do. I can't play anybody else's game, right? I have to make things that are like, if I don't have the beat that I want to hear, I'm going to have to fucking make the beat, right? If nobody understands this flow, I'm going to have to introduce them to this new flow that I came up with. And if you fuck with my world, you come in, you become a fan, you become a consumer, right? And if you don't, you don't. It's all good.
That's such a good point, because I think that's one of the biggest lessons of the blog era was just that,
facts.
Man, you had to do things yourself. It's like
Currency.
it wasn't.
Think about Currency, bro.
Yeah,
Currency was another like major label reject. He was on, this No Limit and Cash Money, right? And it's like, nah, all right, let me find my lane, and it's totally to the left of all that shit. Yeah,
yeah. And so, man, so obviously, Roc Marciano is, this is his reemergence. Some people find him for the very first time.
Yep.
Some people being completely shook by this existence of, wait a minute, he's back. Mm-hmm. How did he came back? He's got this different style. So I guess it's kind of a Reloaded in a way was a sort of maybe proving ground. Like this wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a. Yeah. And I think not only did he knock it out the park, but it was also cool to kind of see him working with other producers, like Alchemist and Q-Tip and Ray West, who became Ray kind West. Of real big. Don't in get enough props. And what was your thoughts of Reloaded and kind of where it stacked up after its debut?
So around, I think Reloaded comes when I think they relaunched Mass Appeal, and I have been working at Mass Appeal when they relaunched and stuff. And my question to myself about Roc was like, can you do it again? Right? Or if like we got the formula the first time, how do you perfect it? And one of the reasons like Lynden, like I'm on some Reloaded shit. Not that I don't like Mars. I love Marsburg, but Reloaded is very high up there for me because it was like, nah, this dude has it down to science, right? Like, it was the persona, it was the type of production he was on, it was like the type of styles he was using, right? Like that pimp shit, all that shit was starting to gelled at that time, and it was like, nah, this is the dude who is your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, for real. Like I remember talking to like wait, was it Hop? Maybe it was Hip Hop, Campbell Joshua, and he was talking about like, yo, like Jay is up on everything, like Jay-Z is up on everything. Jay-Z listens to Roc Marciano. We don't get a picture of them together until like last year, right? But if you know about motherfuckers who can rap, who have technical style, who have like charisma and persona, you gotta be impressed. You know what I'm saying? And I think that album to me was like, if the first one was like a base hit, this was like the grand slam. You know what I'm saying?
And that's my thing, like the charisma, personality, and the way you said it, like the blaxploitation, like style characterization of Reloaded was that times 1,000. And it's exactly what you said. It's like you listen for that story and to see how it was going to keep going and keep progressing.
Yep.
Lynden, I am interested because I know we were talking and you were saying Reloaded was kind of your introduction to rock. What was like, what were you kind of listening to in that era? You know, because like Tim's a little older than me. I'm like the middle, and you're the young guy in this convo. So I'm curious, like, what was it like kind of getting that introduction to rock, like at that era?
Well, see, it's interesting that he said Currency because at that time I'm listening to a lot of Currency, a lot of Action Bronson, and a lot of like Kendrick Lamar. So when I hear him with Kendrick and Consequence, I'm like, okay, who's this guy? See him on a Bronson song, and then I go and listen to Reloaded, and it's a very similar vibe to like Currency in a sense, where it's like it's these two guys who are like pimps almost, just making the most outlandish stories, the most outlandish situations. But the thing is, with Currency, it was more of a feeling, where it was rock, you can see everything. So that's kind of where I really went with it. And I think it was even more interesting about how you said how there wouldn't be people who exist, because without Roc Marciano and Currency, I don't see Larry June existing today.
Not at all. Especially Currency on that tip. You know what I'm saying? And that's another person who reinvented himself. Like there's Larry June records from 10 years ago you listen to that don't sound like what he puts out now, like Orange Print.
Exactly.
Damn, you said something really interesting about rock and kind of like that blaxploitation shit I'd alluded to before. Damn, I want to say like, so like, yo, there's like Rakim Myers, which is his like real name or whatever. And then there's Roc Marciano. And Roc Marciano as a persona is a very distilled, concentrated version of the outlaw that all Americans aspire to be. like, America, we love outlaw culture. We love gangster movies. We know cowboys and Indians, but we know about the cowboys that was sticking shit up. Like, we like to learn about the motherfuckers that's hustling, that's getting all the pussy, that's getting all the money, that's untouchable, that'll kill you in a second, that drive the fast car. And what Rock did was like, yo, I'm going to take that aesthetic that kind of he grew up on, because he's like maybe 40 something or whatever, maybe 41, 42, but like he grew up probably seeing, VHSs of like the Mac, you know what I'm saying, and Superfly and blaxploitation shit. I was like, yo, how do I, without doing some Camp Low shit, you know what I'm saying, embody that for right now? And I think that to me is a big hook to his music. It feels like there's this cool ass narrator talking to you. It's like Donald. What if Donald Goines is like, I'm writing from first person? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It reminds me of like a Black Dynamite episode.
Facts. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great point. Is, I think, beyond the, there's some people that probably listen to Roc Marciano just for the beats, like, because they're just, they're just kind of, they're, maybe they're stuck in the 90s crowd, whatever they are. They just, they want that sound. But Rock's so vivid. I think that's probably what he deserves the most credit, honestly, as a writer. It's just, I think there's not enough credit goes to him of just how vivid he is, as like it is the quintessential listening to a movie, you know, type of stuff. It's like you get a full picture of what he's talking about every time.
Yo, 100%. There's a lyric, and I can't remember this song, but I remember this shit fucked me up. He's talking about being a little kid in a car with his father, hearing on the radio that Marvin Gaye died, right? And then the next song that comes on is like LL Cool J, right? It's like Rock the Bells or some shit. And he uses that, he paints that picture of that moment as an opportunity to talk about the shift in culture that was happening as hip hop became dominant. And I was like, how do you fucking do that? Like anybody I look up to as an artist, right, who I admire a lot, is somebody whose craft I'm like, how the fuck did you do that? You know what I'm saying? Like the folks that you can sit down and write a rap and it's like, all right, it's as good as so and so, whatever. I don't really care. But the people who have that unique talent to like paint a picture and elicit an emotion at the same, that shit is crazy to me, and that's rock.
So as you know, of the next year we kind of get the after Reloaded, we get a double hit of Marciano. And so he first puts out the Pimpire Strikes Back mixtape, and then quickly after that, Marcy Boku. What were you kind of impressions at that time? Like, did you feel like I was like a little too much, or did you like kind of the tandem package of it? You know, what were you kind of thinking of Marciano in that era?
I thought it was interesting because I thought it was like him trying to show off that it wasn't just him in his world, but that he could bring other people into it, right? So like, you know, one of those projects is like him with all the beats. Like he raps on the joints, but it's like I did all the beats, and let me show you that I could produce other people and lend them kind of like my swag, right? And then I think it's Pimpire. One of them strikes me kind of like, again, a compilation in which he brings in a bunch of people. I don't look at either of those as really like cohesive like Roc Marciano albums. I look at them more of as compilations that exist in the Roc Marciano universe. And like Lynden was saying too, like, you know, he's like, oh, I'm listening to Action, and that's how I found out about Roc. Action is like me in that he's one of those people who was ahead, who was like paying attention. Like when I say your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, Action's like, yo, I got to get something with Roc because he's the illest. You know what I'm saying? But back to those same two projects, I really felt like those were compilations. I like those joints. I don't say I don't love them as much as I love his own joints, his own projects, whatever. But like, that's the first time you hear him on Madlib. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Sacrifice, right? Get Over, the shit that Evidence gave him, crazy. And I was like, okay, so like in doing this, he's situating himself as a part of a scene. Even if people aren't exactly on the shit that he's on, he's like, nah, I could work with them and over here. So I understood it strategically, you know, from that perspective. Yeah.
And that's the first time I heard Boldy James too on the Marcy Boku album.
Man, Boldy's another guy kind of reinventing himself, you know, to that point, you know, linking up with Griselda's kind of found this new lane for himself.
I mean, you know what we got to shout out though? We got to shout out this the nucleus of a lot of shit is like Alchemist.
Facts.
Shout out hip hop, shout out Alchemist. But Alchemist is that dude who's like, the reason Boldy is kind of on is because of Alchemist. Like Cool Kids, you know, he's Chuck's like cousin, but Alchemist is like, yo, you're dope, let's do something. And that's how you get My First Chemistry set. You know, Al, like it Action, is one of those people who have that taste and is looking for shit. And it's like, all right, yo, Roc Marciano is ill. This Mossberg shit is ill. He need to get a beat from me. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Boldy. I feel like the resurgence of Boldy right now is definitely like Alchemist related, because Alchemist has firmly situated himself in this area of hip hop where people like myself, yourself, Lynden, like the connoisseurs are looking at him to see who he fucks with, because we know he has a high level of taste, you know?
Oh man, that's an absolute fact. I mean, it's still like just a few months ago he you know, he did it with you know, Backwoods Studios, like as you know, underground as you could possibly be. And it's like suddenly it's like, wait a minute, Alchemist gonna do something with Billy Woods and Elucid? Like, wait, what? Like that just shows you like Alchemist's region. Like you said, I mean, this is a guy, you know, who could clearly be in that lane of just like getting mainstream guys, you know, they're that ALC sound, like that could be his lane. But it's like he is dedicated to sticking to the underground and reaching out to guys that he wants to work with.
Yeah, I think about think about like his rap camp, right? And I think about maybe early 2010s and the communities that were formed around LA hip hop. And it was like either people are at Mac Miller's house, right? And it's his pool, I think it was the pool shed or some shit like that. That was his makeshift studio, or they're gonna be at Rap Camp, which is ALC's crib, or both of them. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you get like, you know, a bunch of shit where Alchemist is producing for Schoolboy Q and Mac Miller's on it, or Mac Miller is on a song with Action. It's produced by ALC. It's because like folks is really trying to create community around music, around like real quality music, you know?
That was literally the Schoolboy Q, Action Bronson, Danny Brown, all
Yep.
and Mac Miller, that whole collective of people. And then like you'd have like Currency pop in and out, and then some of these guys pop in and out.
Yep. Even Freddie, like, yo,
yeah,
think about it.
100%.
Freddie as an artist who reinvented himself, Freddie Gibbs, that is, like, this lane that was helped to be kind of carved out by a Roc Marciano, by ALC. That's where he gets the success to be able to put out some shit like Bandana or Pinata, or, you know, like Alfredo, and get a Grammy nod, right? Like that Grammy nod too, like fuck the Grammys, but at the same time, like that shows that that lane that those guys created is something that has gone from the fringes way more close to the center now, you know?
That's a fact.
Yeah, that's so true. So in the subsequent years, you know, it's kind of maybe a little bit of a throwback to the old ways of we're getting a little waiting time in between his next albums, but he reemerges with Rosebud's Revenge, and this, and like you said, those you know, the 2013 era, it did feel more like kind of spreading his roots, kind of it. Rosebuds to me was definitely kind of like a return in a way, and seemed like a fitting title. What was kind of your impressions of Rosebud at that time?
Oh, that he's going full throttle on the pimp shit. Straight up from the title to the aesthetic to the skits and all that. It was like, yo, that's this part of my persona that I really want to dial up for y'all. So like y'all look at me, he's like, you know, his thing is like he'll say I'm not a fucking weirdo, like, you know, and in his own way he is a weirdo, right? But he wants you to know he's cool, like he gets girls and shit, right? And I think Rosebud was just like, I'm gonna show you that this pimp shit is like core to this persona that I'm projecting, and also at the same time I'm gonna give you a wink at how like innovative I can be and experimental, and I'll explain that later. But like he does things that we expect from him on Rosebud, but then he also colors outside the lines a little bit, and I think he understands that as another lane that he can occupy that nobody else can do like him. Yeah, I'll pull up the songs I was thinking about too, but
like even beyond musically, I feel like Rosebuds was sort of important in, obviously Nipsey Hussle had dabbled in that kind of model of, okay, I'm gonna charge you the high price, but you're kind of in this exclusive club of getting the project. And Marciano starts dipping into that too with that. And so it's like you're throwing down, $40 or so for a digital download. And it's kind of like, wait a minute, this is crazy, but it's like, but it's like if you got enough diehard fans, that's a good investment. It pays off. And suddenly we're seeing, other guys adapt this, and guys go into the extremes of like Mac Homie charging $1,000. But I think Marciano definitely kind of deserves that credit on that, in that lane, because I think a lot of guys were looking to him and then seeing him succeed in doing that and being like, oh, I can do that too. I can wait 6 months and throw it on Apple, once everybody's I don't have to just do the regular streaming release.
It's interesting because right now, because everybody has a platform, and I mean everybody has a platform, not just musicians, we talk a lot about a creator economy, right? And that whole idea of 1,000 true fans is like what everybody's living and dying by in that creator economy, where you have a Patreon or whatever. If you want to really understand what Roc was doing back then, you got to look at it through that lens of saying, yo, there may not be a million people who are gonna press play on my shit and give a fuck about it or give me $1, right? But it might be 1,000 people willing to pay $40 for my shit because they appreciated that so much. Like, I'm gonna appeal to the connoisseurs as a market instead of being mass market, which is how all the major labels work. It's like, how do we make your shit mass? How do we make your shit mass? Rock was like, nah, how do I make it so that the people who really fuck with this appreciate it, pay for it, and sustain me? And I think understanding that model, which a Nipsey helped pioneer or whatever, which a lot of fucking, I'll keep it real, I really feel like a lot of Bay Area artists pioneered too on some hand-to-hand sales shit. To like artists from your state pioneered. Maybe the price point wasn't super high, but that direct to consumer marketing ass shit, like that's that. Out the trunk is direct to consumer marketing. You know what I'm saying? And I think what Rock did is an extension of that and comes from that lineage.
Rock and Mac Homie just flipped it to the high quality art bag, and they're just like, we're just gonna make it and we're just gonna sell this to the people that like this high quality product, and they'll buy it. So
yep.
I did want to mention, you mentioned the Bay in my area too. Here in Louisiana, Texas definitely was such a big part of that trend. I mean, guys, I think Texas is amazing in just guys that sustained a whole career and just never being a national star at all. I mean, completely regional, completely local, even at times.
Yeah, and I think the Rock thing is interesting because it's the idea of being a local star and then extrapolating from that and taking it to a place where local means for a specific group of people rather than a specific locality, right? Like if you're a Houston artist and you doing your dope shit or whatever, you zero or whatever, these people fuck with you. But with a guy like Rock in the internet era, it's like, all right, my state that I might be from, my city that I might be from, in quotation marks, is not so much a geographical place, but it's a type of person and a type of listener and a type of consumer. Yeah.
So in 2018, I think was probably Roc Marciano's most impressive year to me because he put out the sequel to Rosebud's Revenge. Then he puts out Behold a Dark Horse, and he follows it with a Muggs album. DJ Muggs. I was just like, I was kind of beaten over the head with it almost. I'm like, wait a minute, you're doing this project, and now you're doing this one. Now you got the one with Muggs. Like, I was being continually impressed, and I think for me, like Behold the Dark Horse is up there as maybe some of his. I could argue it might be his best because it's just, I love that album, like that 1,000 Deaths joint. I can't get enough of that. Man, what were your kind of impressions of that year and just seeing all that amount of production all in one year?
My impression, and to some people this might be controversial, was that this is the pioneer being influenced by the folks who walked the trail that he blazed. And I say that to say, one of the reasons that Griselda came to prominence is because the motherfuckers is prolific. They just bang, 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 bang. And I think the adjustment that Rock made was like, yeah, I got the sauce and the formula down for what I'm doing, but like, if I dial up the frequency, let me see what happens, right? If I keep on feeding the beats, because that's what Griselda does. They all, you've been looking at it for the past 5, 6, 7 years, whatever. All they do is throw shit out. And I think he was like, all right, boom, let me dial up my productivity and see how it resonates with people. Because when you do that, especially in this era of information and attention, it stays on people's mind, and people associate ubiquity with influence, with quality often. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think he recognized that.
And he gets his biggest like national pub that year. That's when he gets the Rap Radar podcast. That's when he gets the genius looks. He gets his biggest looks so far of his career during this year. And I think it's because of what you said, because of how much stuff he put out that year and people attributing quality with quantity.
And yeah, and it's undeniable. You know what I'm saying? And also, if you're a person who's a Roc Marciano advocate, then you have mad shit to point at that year to be like, yo, you should check this because he's this. And when we talk about, I just want to go back a little bit, talking about Roc Marciano advocates and the people who are influential and connoisseurs who appreciated him. I think about ASAP Yams. You know what I'm saying? I think about Stevie. Eastside Stevie was a big Roc Marciano fan. And people will be like, oh, that don't make sense. That kid's in the Dipset in Houston rap and ASAP Rocky. But nah, he's a hip hop connoisseur. And I think another thing that really became a lot cooler in the 2010s is being that kind of like omnivorous hip hop connoisseur, right? Where it's like, I listen to mad different hip hop, right? And I see the appreciation in all that. And so even as a person like Rocky rises to prominence, people look to Yams and it's like, yo, that's the architect. He knows what's up. So if he's talking about it, it must be worthwhile. Even if the dude is 30. You know what I'm saying? Because like I think like he's talking about Rock when Rock is like 30 something or whatever, like early 30s and shit like that. And you would think he wouldn't give a fuck about some underground 30-year-old rapper. You know what I'm saying?
But they were the same mold. Like Yams loved that, like that persona that Roc Marciano is.
That cool shit, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I did, in terms of those mentioning kind of, those tastemakers in a way, I think in addition to Alchemist that we mentioned earlier, like Muggs probably deserves some credit in that lately in terms of him starting to, lend his ear. He back in the day, he was doing an album with Jizza and he was doing an album with Planet Asia, but these last couple of years, he's started to kind of do that model of just kind of like, man, I'm just going to find some dope MCs, with Mayhem Lauren or whoever it is. Edo, he did one with him pretty recently, and he's like, I'm gonna just work with y'all, like I'm gonna just produce the whole thing, and so that's a cool thing that Muggs is doing. But I really loved seeing him work with Marciano because it was cool just seeing a whole album where Rock was like, okay, I don't have to do the beats. It's like it's all in somebody else's control, and I'm just
for real. And like, I mean, damn, I think about I was listening to a bunch of old Mug shit, old Cypress shit back in the day, just bugging it like. He's just Muggs is really that dude on the low. Like he's really, 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 really that dude in terms of like flipping the obscure shit, been relevant and around in different eras, and having that good ear for dope shit. Like you talk about Jizza and like him working with him being one of the early ones to be like, yo, Jizza, yo, the reason Alchemist fucks with Mobb Deep so hard is because Muggs was fucking with IM3 with Infamous, right? And they met, all the Queensbridge cats met them through Muggs because Muggs is like, oh, nah, I'm gonna do a compilation. I'm gonna have Goody Mob on it. Goody Mob with Muggs, what the fuck? And it's fire, right?
Love that song. Love that song.
Let me stop gushing about my Soul Assassins love. But yeah.
Shout out to Soul Assassins though. But so the next album we got from Marcy is Marcelago. And to me,
damn. Could we, before we get to this record, could I mention something real quick? Yo, so there's a track on Rosebud's Revenge, right? And it's called The Sauce, right? And it's super fucking weird. It's like some German prog rock sample, like electro shit, slowed down, and it's mad creepy and eerie. And he does his same pimp shit, but on that, and he makes it sound sinister. And I think as if Rosebud was him leaning into like the pimp shit real hard, maybe content wise, stylistically, I think on RR2, what he's doing, or Rosebud's Revenge, what he's doing is showing that he can be innovative and take sonic chances. And he does that sonic and stylistic chances. And I think that tells a story leading up to even the next record.
So after that, that busy 2018 comes with Marcelago, and I think what always stood out to me on that, and it kind of, hit me in 2020 was him kind of introducing or maybe reintroducing for some people Stove God Cooks, and Stove God is getting this kind of shot to rhyme. And I remember, I was still at DX at the time, and Roc Marciano's manager Jazz is like hitting me
Shout
up.
out Jazz.
And so he's like, man, check out this Cooks. Check out Cooks. And I'm like, okay, who's this Cook? I don't know who's this Cooks guy. And I'm like, and then I hear like snapping. I'm like, okay, this guy's awesome. Okay, what's he doing though? He's like, he's Busta's artist. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, now we're getting the flip mode connection, and it's going full circle. But and so he's on that album. And I remember the one that like stood out to me was he's on this joint called Puff Daddy, and I was just like, I was just amazed by this Stove God Cooks guy. I was like, where did Rock find this guy? So I think that's a great example of like what you were saying of kind of guys are finding their influence, you know, and realizing their kind of role as a tastemaker. To me, like Stove God was a great example of like Rock kind of channeling that old, you know, style of the guest appearance. Like the guest appearance wasn't like, let's get this big name. It was like, I'm gonna put this dude on and give him a shot, and you're gonna be impressed by him because I'm impressed by him.
Thinking about Nas, think about AZ in their first imprint, and motherfuckers didn't know who they were, and it was like, who's that? And that's, I mean, I live for that feeling of listening to a record and being like, yo, who the fuck was that? And to your point about Stove God, I first found out about him via you know, Busta making the rounds with him as Aaron Cooks, and was like, yo, this is Aaron Cooks, he's from upstate, and I seen some freestyles with him on video, maybe it was Sway or some shit like that.
Yeah, there was one Sway, yeah.
Weird dude. Because he would do this thing where, like, you know how you talking to a mic, you're just like in front of it, but he would like wave around his head like Stevie Wonder and shit like that. And he was very animated, and it was like he was almost acting out an internal dialogue. And I was like, what the fuck? I wonder what this guy's record's gonna be like. And I think I give props to Roc because, and definitely props to Stove God Cooks, but I give props to Roc for helping shape what he could be on records. You know what I'm saying? Because when I saw the freestyles, I was like, oh, this dude is ill. But I was like, how does it translate? And then motherfucker made it translate.
Yeah, such a great point. Because to you know, so kind of like referencing back what I was saying, like, you know, so I'm getting hit up by Jazz, and he's telling me about this project, and he's like, you know, like Roc's doing the project with him. I'm like, oh, it's a collab. He's like, no, he's producing the whole thing, and I'm like, whoa. So I'm kind of getting excited for that. And then I just remember him sending it to me and just being kind of like absolutely blown away by it. I was like, I honestly think it might be Roc's like best production, like in terms of the whole album. And just, I was just amazed by the Stove God Cooks guy. I was like, where this guy Roc just found the hidden gem of everybody. Like, I was so impressed. That Reasonable Drought album was one of my favorite albums from last year. And I think I love that too, where like guys like Roc, who are incredible MCs, flex their muscles a little bit. Like, I'm gonna just produce this. I'm you know, I'm seeing like, you know, Evidence would do that, and you know, seeing like Big Crit like did it with the like Bun B, and like I love to see when guys do that.
I mean, it was such a dope reintroduction to the artist, like introduction / reintroduction to Stove God Cooks. You know, and it's funny because Stove God Cooks, though he is, you know, a street rapper, you know, drug dealer rapper, his shit is so different from everybody else who's kind of even in the lane that Roc created. Like, you expect a certain type of cadence when people bar out. You don't expect certain kind of like, you know, self-referential things that he does or whatever, intonations or whatever. Like, I really feel like in terms of that world of, you know, Griselda shit, you know, Roc Marciano, Mayhem, I really do love the addition of Stove God Cooks to it because he adds so much personality to it, you know?
Yeah. I think, you know, one more thing about him is like almost like when I'm listening to him, I almost visualize like a guy like in the middle of a talk just going on a tangent almost. Like it's just he just goes in these odd directions, and it's like it stands out so much to me. I'm like, man, this guy's dope. It's like, you know, it's one of those things where it clicks, like that it's so different. It's sort of like this year, like when I'm hearing Bruiser Wolf from the Bruiser Brigade for the first time, it's like, oh man, this is so different. Like it's what I'm expecting to happen is just going completely sideways, and I'm loving it for that.
I'm gonna try to tweet that into existence because I definitely want to hear like a Bruiser Wolf fucking Stove God Cooks record. Lynden, how you feel? Would you fuck with that?
I would definitely listen to that. I definitely would listen to that. But see, I want to ask you, you talked about the expansive sound on RR2. I think Murcielago is Roc flexing his like, I'm really that producer. When you go from like Molly Ringwald to Choosing Fear to Richard Gere, and then with Ephesians with Kai, it's just like, oh yeah, like I'm on my production bag. Like, I'm really that guy.
Damn, fat. I mean, damn. And you know what, yo? Even I'm thinking about a couple things as you say that, right? His production is a vehicle to introduce not just himself and his world, but also other people. And we mentioned Stove God Cooks, but we can't mention or can't fail to mention like Ka, right? And how he put Ka really in the foreground for a lot of folks, right? Same thing with Knowledge the Pirate, right? Like they exist in his world, and they're two very different ass artists too, which is funny.
So different.
But like he through his production, he introduces them into our world or his world.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
I think, mentioning Kyle that was another one where I trace it back to that Pro Tools album, and Jizza was like, that was the time I heard him, and then it's like I go down that rabbit hole of like, oh wait, he was in Natural Elements, and wait a minute, when was he with them? Like, cause like I remember like there was some kind of compilation of Natural Elements, and like he wasn't on that, and so I'm like trying to figure out the timeline stuff.
He was in a group called Nightbreed, and they
and so
like in the earliest iteration of Natural Elements,
and it was interesting because like he's parallel to Roc. Like they're coming, they're that reemergence is happening together. They're collaborating constantly, and it's like in a way, I guess Ka was almost like the even more underground head version. It's like if you were even more of an underground head, that would be on Marciano. It was like, yeah, but this guy Ka, like Grief Predigue, you got to check this out. You got to check out Ironworks, and like Animus was producing for him, and did stuff with Roc too. It was interesting. I think one of the kind of things with Ka and Roc that people have always wondered is like, are they going to do this album together? It's always been teased of if this metal clergy was going to do something. What do you think? Would you want to see them do a full album together? Or do you feel like the collaborations kind of satisfy that enough?
Yo, man. So from the perspective of a fan and consumer, of course I'm selfish, and anything they want to give me, I would like to I would like to get, right, in terms of music. Anything they try to give in music, I want to get. But at the same time, I remember seeing a tweet from Ka, you probably saw it too, where people were bugging him about Metal Clergy. He was like, yo, these are the list of the songs that we have together. Put those together, that's an album. You good, right? And I was, something to that effect. And I literally made a playlist like that because I'm a nerd. And I'm like, nah, you know what? If we get it, great. If we don't, we don't. Because you got to think about it, like artists. I'm very much appreciative about the art that I get, and I don't feel entitled to more than I've already gotten. Because these are people who exist in life and time. Things change. They may not feel like it. But the fact they gave me the art when they gave it to me and it meant something to me is enough. So for right now, I would love for them to do a record together. But for right now, my fucking, Rockin' Ka Metal Clergy playlist with like 9 songs on it that I got, it's working for me still.
That's such, that's so well said too, because I think especially in this era where we're getting kind of overwhelmed with music at times, it's like there's that constant bugging of the artist, like y'all need to do this collab project. You need like J. Cole and Kendrick's obviously the famous one that gets bugged about all the time, but it is kind of more fun like when the collaboration kind of comes out of nowhere. You're not like kind of anticipating that these two people were going to do something. So it's like, I would almost love that too. If like, the buzz has completely died down and then they popped up, but and we weren't even expecting, we're like, whoa, y'all actually did it kind of thing. So in terms of like the last solo project that Roc had, Mount Marcy, he just had that one last year. I enjoyed the album. I know you were telling me you were like thinking it went up there with Lago, in terms of the.
I'm a big Lago guy. My Marcy was a little different for me.
Yeah. I liked Mount Marcy, but what's kind of your take in your review of Mount Marcy and what he did on this latest one?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, Mount Marcy is his weirdest record by far. Like this is him like straight up leaning into like, yo, I could do bugged out shit, have bugged out flows or whatever. Fucking Kool Keith is on this record. Did you have that on your bingo? You don't think for Roc Marciano albums?
I did not, but I loved it. It was
I
so
loved it.
out of
That's
left
what I'm
field.
saying. Like, so, all right, he's perfected the pimp persona. You know what the fuck it is content wise, and it stylistically goes all the way left. The record may not be, to me, it's not better than Reloaded to me, or like in terms of favorites or whatever, but it's a record I still love and very greatly appreciate because it's coloring outside the line so much. And I want more avant-garde shit, you know, and people assume like, yo, people assume they have this stupid ass thing where they feel like street rappers can't push the envelope. And street rappers are pushing the envelope all the time stylistically. You know, whether that be Young Thug, right? If you want to keep it funky, or whether it's like Roc doing what he does in his lane, in his world. Like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, you got to be like, I don't know, some like, you know, kind of more so-called backpack, whatever. And then people give you credit for like innovating, coloring outside the lines. But Roc is showing you was like, I'm the same, you know, pimped out, drug dealing, like, you know, street dude or whatever. But I'm also a music connoisseur, and I'm also a person who's gonna do shit that nobody else could do. That's the other thing. Because the lane that he created is more crowded with folks, right? He does what every artist who's kind of in pole position is going to do, which is like, I'm gonna go to the left. You can't follow me here. What the fuck? You gonna do that? Ha ha. No, you can't. Right? Like, think about Kendrick, right? So like To Pimp a Butterfly was like, yo, he could have came out and try to compete with Drake and do some Drake shit or whatever, right? But then he did an album that the number one rapper at the time could not do. Who the fuck else is gonna do To Pimp a Butterfly on that level, right? Who's gonna do something that's so strange and just whatever and still have it work? And I think every artist who's like a vanguard fucking artist or whatever is gonna be the type of person to do that. Even Kanye does that or has done that, you know. So I think this record, again, though it's not my favorite record, I love it, I fuck with it, and I appreciate it for it being this advancement stylistically in hip hop.
Yeah, what you said about, you know, Roc's lane getting more crowded, I think that's probably what's most intriguing about what he'll do next. Is just because like it feels like, okay, he's gonna push it. He's gonna push the boundary even further now on this next one, because it's like that's the way, you know, to keep moving forward for him.
I predict there's probably going to be a Roc Marciano record with somebody from Migos at some point. Yes, I think that's going to happen. Watch.
Right, hey, it's on record now, so you get to brag publicly. All right. Well, so you know, we did mention Griselda a bit. I think it would kind of be remiss to just kind of not discuss a little bit about Roc's kind of influence and legacy. You know, what would you say, you know, is Roc's kind of legacy, his biggest impact, you know, kind of on a macro kind of view?
I'd say Roc's biggest impact is reviving a lane for East Coast style street rap. That is, you know, quote unquote underground. You know, and I think he really should get the credit for doing that when you can have things that are sample based, right? When you have songs that don't have a lot of drums, when you could have you know, very visual references to street life, be it pimping, be it drug dealing, whatever, right? You know, like I like to say his shit is like a screenplay written by Donald Goines in a movie directed by Michael Mann type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like that. And I think anybody who dabbles in that lane of street shit that's elaborate but also skill concerned, that's the thing. Like, no one's gonna say Conway can't rap. You know what I'm saying? Like, he made it cool to have skills and be a street rapper. Like, you know, because like there was this whole thing where like to be street meant you couldn't be so-called lyrical or whatever because you was on some I'm not a rapper shit, whatever. Nah, Roc is like, nah, I could bring that all back together. And I say back together because that's something that a G-Rap embodied. That's something like a Rakim embodied, right? Some of the cool he has comes from that Big Daddy Kane, you know, aesthetic and shit like that. And I think while Roc is an innovator in those ways, he's also like, you know, a preservationist. You know what I'm saying? Because he's resurrected a bunch of shit. And I think when we talk about this kind of lane of street rap too, that's out right now, we have to talk about what Wu-Tang did, because all this shit is still directly connected to Wu-Tang, and not to say it bit, but it's in that lineage of Ray and Ghost and RZA production and all that shit. You know, like think Hollow Bones, right? Hollow Bones could drop right now, and these this is incredible. You know, it's Griselda. So yeah.
It's such a good point, man. Tim, thank you so much for joining us to talk about rock. It was great to catch up with you. Where can listeners, keep up with you these days?
Yo, so just follow me on Twitter. I'm Timmhotep, Timmhotep, and no, I'm not a conservative black nationalist. It's just a name. Relax. Yeah, Timmhotep. You can catch me on Twitter. I also do a radio show once a month on NTS Live. That's NTS Live, the British online radio station. It's called Subject to Change. It's always thematic radio shows. It's me speaking a little bit on it. That's tap in for that. You'll see it in my bio. And one other thing, if you like rap a lot and you are on Spotify or you're on Apple Music, look for my Rap Caveat playlist. Rap is spelled WRAP, Caveat CAVEAT. So like rap, like Reynolds rap, like it's a rap. Caveat. It is usually about 5 hours of new music. I know that sounds daunting, but it's like what my approach to it is going across the board for every type of nook and cranny of just dope hip hop. Because myself, people like Lynden, people like Justin, we have broad taste in hip hop because we love hip hop. You know, we don't just like one style of shit. We like hip hop. So like, if you love hip hop, you like new hip hop, you like to see new artists and find out about new artists, you like to hear what some of your artists you may have been a fan of but haven't tapped in with in a long time are doing, check out Rap Caveat on Apple and Spotify. And that's that.
All right. Man, I'm going to throw in a quick recommendation for that too. Tim's playlist puts me on stuff all the time, especially New York scene. Like I find all kind of New York, newbies coming out that Tim's got is tapped into. So definitely check that out if you want to keep up. But thank you again for joining us. It's great having you.
Yo, Lynden, Justin, thank you very much. And hit me up when this comes out, bro. I'll let people know.
All right, what a great conversation with Tim. Appreciate him stopping by, talk Roc Marciano. I think, we really got into just how important rock is into the hip hop culture and to the hip hop industry in a way, in the way he's kind of influenced new marketing, new styles, new, ways to go direct to consumer. So, great to reflect on Roc's legacy, both as musically and as influence in terms of the industry.
That conversation, not to cut you off, but that conversation made me think we need to do an Alchemist episode at some point, because that detour was awesome.
Yes, that's a great point. You know what? For our first producer episode, Alchemist would be a pretty great pick. So that might be a little tease. We might have to get that one in the chamber, find the right guest for that one. But before we wrap up this week, we always like to leave you with a little listener lanyard, getting into our taste, outside of just the hip hop realm. And so Lynn, man, what you been checking out of late? What you want people to check out?
So in the world of like movies and TV, I have a movie. It just came out on Netflix. It's called American the Motion Picture. I tapped in with like my animated heads, like who are big animated fans, and they say this is absolutely amazing. It's a spoof on the George Washington and Samuel Adams era, 1774 American Revolution stuff. Channing Tatum voices George Washington. Jason Mantzoukas is in it. It's absolutely hilarious, and I definitely want to recommend that to you. Also, on a music tip, shout out to Lafayette's Finest, my guy Jason. He just dropped a new album. It's only on SoundCloud right now, which I don't know why, but like it's so good. I don't know why he's doing that, but I say la vie. So you just go to SoundCloud, you type in Jason, and it's called, hold on, I'm gonna give you the exact name of it because I don't want to butcher. It's Not Always About You. This guy can really spit. Like he's probably the best rapper in Lafayette, just to keep it a stack.
Yeah, I will say, if you're wondering, man, this guy Jay Sands, that name might sound familiar. Okay, he's not the guy from Lone Catalyst. That's Jay Sands, FYI. But this guy, you might see him on Twitter because he is crazy heavy on the promotion. He will jump in on pretty much every thread, anything popping in hip hop, and he'll be one of the first comments having one of his videos on there. It's usually
And his videos are crazy.
they're good.
Like,
They are good.
like
They're really
the one
good.
where he spoofed Pornhub, like Rap Hub, that was nuts.
And so, but I always laugh at it because I dig Jay Sands' music too, but I always laugh like when those Twitter threads start popping off, and it's like he's become so ubiquitous that like people have noticed and like are like calling him out, like, oh, okay, you posted that video already. Like there's people now that are so in tune with it because he's always keeping up on the the threads that are going viral.
That's
So
a fact.
so I like that, Lynn. I like that pick. For me, I'm gonna go a little music too, but outside of hip hop, I'm gonna go a little soul music.
Okay.
This guy, Aaron Frazier.
I'm looking this up.
He's a member of a band called Duran Jones and the Indications, and he's one of the singers in it. So like you hear his vocals occasionally, but he put out his first album, a solo album, just called Introducing. So introducing Aaron Frazier, and man, it's like a complete throwback to the 70s. It's like an old school soul album that you would have heard on Motown or something. And yeah, I just love it. There's this one song, Can't Leave You Alone. And I think it might have got some like a TV commercial or a video game, even maybe like it might have landed somewhere like that, it getting some airplay like that. But yeah, Aaron Frazier, really dope. Honestly, if you haven't heard Duran Jones' Indications, they're really good too. So if you like what you're hearing with him, go down that rabbit hole of listening to them. And movie wise, I know Lynn's gonna call me out on this because
We gotta keep him honest. We gotta let the people know, like when we see a trend happening,
I'm apparently showing a Korean bias in my movie picks, but there's this new movie, The Swordsman. It came out this year, and it's really, really good. It's it's kind of a throwback tale. Guy kind of looking out for his daughter, and daughter gets taken, and so boom, he's on the path for revenge. But man, the reason I was like all in on it was because the man who plays Sub-Zero in the new Mortal Kombat, Joe Taslim, guy from the Raids movies, all kind of action flicks, he's playing the bad guy, and man, he's killing it. He's chewing the scenery. I'm loving it. And he's wearing a pretty shitty wig, but I also dig those shitty wig too.
I'm definitely going to check this out. This is number 3 for the audio listeners. We're keeping tabs. This is the third Korean movie in a row that Justin has recommended. And then for the YouTube audience, we're going to have a tally counter that's going to just come across the screen as like how many times we're keeping this going, man. I'm going to keep tabs.
I like that. We'll see. Maybe we'll get when we get to the end of the year, we'll see how
many you've done,
how far down this Korean cinema world I've gone. But yeah, I'm just gonna blame Korea for being too good at movies right now. Y'all are, South Korea's making amazing films. So
they are.
So Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook and all these guys, y'all are. Thank you for giving me too much material and letting Lynn give me a little shit. But man, thank y'all again for joining us on the Never Less Than L podcast. Appreciate all of you listening. We'll be back soon with another one. Talk to you soon. Peace.